from the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
Welcome to Broncos Country Tonight as we continue to talk about the coaching candidates for the Denver Broncos as they will be hitting the trail this week to interview three guys. Aaron Glenn with the Detroit Lions, and then a couple of guys there with the Green Bay Packers. Nathaniel Hackett. May have heard of him, kind of a big name that's out there. I don't know, a guy that I've been saying on Broncos Country Tonight, the radio show, that I think the Broncos should get. No big deal. And Getsy as well, the quarterback's coach. That'd be a good one, too.
I'll make a little wager.
I know you got
Put a little money. Which Packers guy is more likely to wind up on the staff?
Listen, you were so wrong about the national championship. I'm half tempted to take this bet. You were so wrong. You thought a guy.
I was wrong about the Nuggets game last night. I'm like 0 for my last 4.
Yeah, you thought Stetson Bennett in no way or universe
never bet on a guy named after a crappy cologne
would ever beat Alabama and the great Nick Saban. You said that. Your words.
I did.
So now I kind of feel like I should take the bet.
Inconceivable.
But then maybe you're just playing mind games with me and you're doing like the rope-a-dope where you're going to lose a couple of times just so that you can win big.
So you can feel good. I'm trying to prop you up, Brian.
Yeah. I'm on your games.
You hit on the Nuggets thing last night, didn't you?
No,
you were like me.
No.
I traced you and lost. Went 0 for 2. That's what happened.
All right, man. What I wanted to ask you about today, and as we continue to sort of break down these candidates, I know you're a big Dan Quinn guy. Let's sort of start here with the picture of where the Broncos sit as far as attractiveness. Who are they competing with? What other teams are they competing with here to get some of these top level options at head coach?
Well, first of all, what do you consider top level? You Hackett and Dan Quinn?
I'd say those are. I mean,
those are the hottest two names in this cycle.
Besides the Jaguars, Dan Quinn's interviewing everywhere.
Yeah, he's interviewing everywhere, and he would have interviewed with the Jaguars, but he turned them down, and he balkied at the idea. And
nice. I like what you did there.
You're welcome for that. And so if Trent Balk's going to be there, he's not going to be there. So that's kind of his thing.
But you got the Bears, you got the Dolphins, the Giants.
Dolphins have some sentimentality for Dan Quinn. He worked there on their Nick Saban staff. That's actually where he and George Paton worked together on Nick Saban's staff down there in Miami back in the day. That's where they met. The Bears situation, I don't think that's a real thing. I think he's just getting the interview everywhere. He interviewed for the Bears before and turned them down, and that was because they didn't hire George Paton as GM. They hired Ryan Pace. So he's like, I don't want to work here. And then the Giants job, I'm not sure that he's going to interview there. We'll see. I suspect they're going to end up hiring Adrian Wilson as the GM there. He comes to the Cardinals, and I suspect they'll go with the Cardinals family coach, someone like Byron Leftwich there, but we'll see.
I just want to spend a minute here kind of talking about what attractiveness for the position means, because some people will say, well, having the quarterback is attractive. But see, I look at Jacksonville, and I don't think that's a very attractive job.
See, I do. Jacksonville has all their draft picks. They've got the quarterback. The problem with Jacksonville, why it's not attractive, is Trent Baalke. Baalke famously stabbed his coaches in the back over and over again in his last tenure as general manager. Is part of the reason Harbaugh wasn't there in San Francisco anymore, and several other coaches stabbed him in the back, knifed him. It was famously created toxic work environments. I'm sort of rooting for Bill O'Brien there, who knifed his general manager in the back down there in Houston, just so we can see the machinations,
the circle of life,
Machiavellian machinations going on in Jacksonville.
I think Elton John sang about it, but yes,
right. But to be honest with you. The Jacksonville job is attractive on paper because you've got the quarterback, you've got your draft picks, and you've got salary cap space. The downside is the general manager sucks out loud. Beyond that, so that's the question. Also, the ownership has kind of been terrible.
Yeah, they're a perpetual loser, too.
Right.
That's the thing. That's what I'm saying.
But the bar for you to clear is low. You get them to the playoffs, and you're never buying a drink again. So it's, the bar, you're getting a huge extension. So, there's a give and take with that. As opposed to Denver, where you don't have the quarterback, and you don't have the ownership situation, but you also have draft picks. You've got the salary cap, and you've got a pretty stacked roster. So if you're a guy that's into roster building, you're probably going to look at the Jacksonville thing and say, I could make something here. If you're a guy that's like, I want to bring my quarterback in, I want to get my guy go, Denver's probably more attractive. The ownership situation in Denver doesn't play into anything about any of these guys. I know a hot take radio guy keeps talking about it. Doesn't matter in the least to these guys. Didn't matter to George Paton, who turned down other jobs to come here. It's not going to matter to any of these head coaches, at least not the 2 or 3 candidates that I've talked to already. They're like, that doesn't mean a thing to me.
Yeah, George Paton came here knowing full well that things were going to change as soon as the very next year.
Right.
Joe Ellis was in those meetings.
Right.
John Elway was in those meetings.
McFangio was in those meetings.
They told them, hey, there were going to be changes on the horizon. That's why they gave him a 6-year deal. And guess what? He had a great first year, and he's going to be more than safe. And so is this next head coach, at least if they find success early on. But that's kind of the thing that's been bouncing around my head is, okay, well, if the Broncos say want Dan Quinn, okay, who's one of the top guys on the market because everybody's interviewing him, what makes them more attractive than the rest of them? The rest of them all seem to have their quarterback. And that's where I think the Broncos do have a little bit of an uphill battle to climb.
Well, it depends. It depends on how you look at it. You already have the quarterback, but does that coach believe in that quarterback? Let's say the Chicago job. Does that coach believe in Justin Fields? Because a lot of guys don't. There are a lot of people around there that didn't. That's why he got passed up by like everybody.
But he's last year's first rounder. You're not moving on from that dude.
I'm not saying you're moving on from him, but I'm saying if you're Brian Daboll, you're looking at that saying, I can fix that. If you're Dan Quinn, you're looking at that saying, can we trade him? I'd rather have somebody that I don't, that's more efficient that I know what I can do with. You go back and you look, and I mean, historically, guys that were as bad as Justin Fields were in his first year don't tend to do that well. There are outliers, but they tend not to be very good long term. So that could be a downside. You look at Trevor Lawrence and you say, I want that. You look at Justin Fields and say, I don't want that. You look at the Broncos situation and say, I can do what I want. And so I think it just depends on the mindset of the person interviewing for that job. Some people are going to want the Trevor Lawrence. Some people are going to want the Broncos situation where they can bring in whoever they want, or that kind of thing. So the downside of that is if you're going after a trade in that scenario, you're giving up draft picks to do that. And so a coach may want to weigh that in their decision as well.
And the roster for the Broncos is pretty solid. I mean, there's going to be some decisions to make in the offseason, but it isn't the structure. Like, you're not – I mean,
your best players
biggest
are under
names,
contract.
yeah, your best players are all basically done. The Von Miller deal was the biggest one that was going to end the offseason. Bradley Chubb's on a 5th-year option. You probably just kick that forward and continue there. So, yeah, I mean, I think that more or less for the Broncos roster, it kind of comes down to the quarterback. The Dolphins are appealing because you mentioned their salary cap situation. They have the top salary cap availability. They do, in theory, have the quarterback, especially if they get the coach that really believes in Tua Tagovailoa. Of course, they also might be the team that gets Deshaun Watson, which also kind of cloudies things there a little bit too. So I feel like all these situations kind of have their own positives and negatives. I guess it kind of comes down to, I think, what you said there. It's about when you take a look at that roster, when you take a look at that division, do you see what you want to do to kind of make it your own? Now, for Dan Quinn, I think that's why he does fit so well, because it is kind of come down to, okay, who's my offensive coordinator and how are we going to get the quarterback fixed? Those are the biggest questions with Dan Quinn, because everything else is kind of there already. With the rest of the guys that the Broncos are interviewing, they're all possible first-year candidate options. Well, there are bigger questions because you don't know what their leadership style is, especially as a head coach. And then the rest of their staff is a little bit contingent on, again, what's the quarterback situation. So maybe the bigger question really is the quarterback, but at least right now as we're talking about the head coach, I think that you kind of have to still tie it back to it.
That's the question for any of these candidates. At the end of the day, what is your vision? What are we going to do at quarterback? What do you want to do at quarterback? And what is your vision for this offense? That's the question. And everybody's going to be asked that, whether they're a defensive guy, offensive guy, special teams guy, the guy in the parking lot, whatever. So that's the question. It's the only question. It's the question you start with. And the thing about these interviews, and we pointed out the common thread that I think most people have missed, is that these guys have played against this roster. These guys have coached against this roster recently, all of them. Hackett and Getsy are the ones that are the longest, and that's only because it was last year. But they've coached again. They've seen this team firsthand, up close, recently. And so they're going to have ideas not only on how to stop, but how to attack it.
So if Nathaniel Hackett and Luke Getsy say we can get Aaron Rodgers, then that might go a long way to helping them.
I think that's going to be a joke when they interview them up front. I think that's going to be the first thing in the door. It's like, so when are you bringing us Rodgers?
Yep.
But when it comes down to it, I think that you've got to have an energetic coach with a long-term vision for the offense of this team, and understands what they need to do on defense, what they need to keep it from taking a step backward.
All right. As always, we'll continue to break it down right here. For Benjamin Allbright, I'm Ryan Edwards. Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight.